The rain had been falling all day, but as night crept in, it turned merciless. It was the kind of rain that didn't just make you wet tit pressed on you. Drowned out your thoughts, seeped into your bones until you forgot what warmth felt like. I had been standing under the crooked tin roof of an old bus stop, my shoulders hunched, my breath rising in pale fog. My shoes squelched with every tiny step I took, soaked so thoroughly they sounded like sponges every time I shifted my weight. And still, I waited. I had clung to the hope that the bus would eventually come, because that was the only plan I had left. But hope has a cruel way of thinning in the rain. Hours passed, as the painted metal bench beneath the shelter was slick and cold, so I stayed. Standing, shivering, staring down the empty road. Cars sliced by now and then, headlights glowing like indifferent eyes. Their reflections shimmered in the black puddles, their engines roared, but none of them slowed. None of them looked long enough to notice that I was still there, soaked and stranded. I thought of the coins I had dropped into the machine earlier. The ticket that now felt like a worthless scrap in my pocket. My phone had died hours ago. Had no one to call, no roof to run to. The storm had turned the world into a cage of water and darkness, and I was trapped at its center. For a moment, I considered simply sitting down in the mud, letting the storm swallow me whole, thinking, maybe this is how you disappear, not with noise, but with silence. And then, through the sheets of rain, a pair of headlights slowed. Sound of an engine idling cut through the pounding storm. A old battered farm truck pulled to the curb. The window rolled down, and a voice, roughened by years of labor, but laced with something steady, called out, "You waiting for that bus?" I nodded, my jaw stiff from the cold. The man inside shook his head, a sad kind of half-smile on his lips. "Son, that bus was canceled months ago." The word struck me harder than the rain. The last fragile string I'd been holding on to snapped. The bus wasn't coming. It hadn't been coming all along. I could have cursed, could have broken down, but instead, I just stood frozen. The farmer studied me for a moment, then jerked his head toward the passenger seat. "Climb in before you drown." I hesitated. Trusting a stranger in the middle of nowhere isn't easy. My mind wrestled with suspicion, fear, and exhaustion. But then I looked past him into the back of the truck. Crates of apples, sacks of potatoes, bundles of green signs, of a man who had been at market, signs of honest work. He didn't look like a threat. He looked like someone who had carried too many burdens already. "Folks here," he muttered, almost more to himself than to me. "Some forget what it's like to be stuck. I don't." Something in his tone told me he understood my kind of helplessness. I climbed in. The door creaked shut behind me, and for the first time that night, warmth brushed my skin as the heater coughed to life. The smell inside the cab was earthy wet soil. Hay, old leather seat sand, strangely comforting. We pulled onto the road, and as the wipers struggled to fight the storm, he kept his eyes forward. Cars continued to pass us, and I realized how. Many people had seen me standing there. How many had chosen to drive on, pretending not to see, and yet this one man had stopped. Just one. Kindness nugget number 1. Studies show that witnessing kindness inspires others to act. One act of compassion can ripple outward to at least 3 observers. But tonight, out of all those drivers, only one had slowed down. Only one had chosen to act. The truck rattled as he shifted gears, and then without looking at me, he began to speak. His voice was low, like the sound of boots on gravel. "Years ago, I was out here too, same stretch of road. But I wasn't waiting for myself." He paused. The wipers squeaked across the glass. "I was carrying my little girl, burning up with fever. I begged for a ride." Car after car drove past me. His grip tightened on the wheel until his knuckles went pale. By the time I carried her home, it was too late. I swallowed hard. The words lodged in my throat like stones. He kept his gaze on the storm, his face a mask carved by grief that had never left him. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just a ride. This was redemption. Every time he stopped for a stranger, he was keeping a promise his daughter never lived to hear. No one else would be left behind. The rain hammered harder. As though echoing his pain, I sat there in silence, realizing that if he hadn't stopped, for me, I would have been left in the storm until dawn, vulnerable to whatever might come. But for him, saving me wasn't charity. It was survival, his survival as much as mine. Kindness nugget number 2. Helping others can transform. Grief into purpose. Acts of kindness reduce stress and even rewire the brain away from despair. By the time we reached the next town, 30 miles away, I was exhausted but safe. He handed me an old, wrinkled map from his glove box. "You'll need this more than I will," he said simply, and then he drove off into the night, his taillights swallowed by the rain. But the story didn't end there. A week later, carrying a loaf of bread and a bag of coffee as thanks, I went to find him. His farm was tucked on the edge of wide fields, quiet and humble, the smell of earth rich in the air. I expected solitude, but what I saw stopped me in my tracks. Students were volunteering in his fields. Neighbors were dropping by with meals. Strangers brought envelopes of help. Somehow, word of the farmer's kindness had spread. His story had woven itself through the town, and people responded not with pity, but with action. This man, once broken by loss, had become a silent beacon. His vow, born of pain, had rippled outward into something larger. Kindness had snowballed into a movement. One evening, as I helped unload crates from his truck, a little girl, no more than 7, tugged at his sleeve. She was an orphan, the town had taken in. Her eyes shone like tiny stars, full of unspoken gratitude. She whispered, "Thank you for stopping for him. My mama said you saved him." The farmer bent down slowly, his weathered face trembling as though the years of sorrow were cracking open. Tears filled his eyes, and his voice broke as he said, "Maybe this time." I finally stopped in time. Kindness nugget number 3. Children who witness generosity are twice as likely to grow into adults who keep kindness alive. I left that farm with more than gratitude, left with a lesson etched into me forever. Kindness isn't about convenience, it's about courage. One man, devastated by loss, chose to keep helping strangers. And because he did, an entire community rose with him. Months later, a letter arrived at my door. No return address, just 4 words scrawled in pencil, for her. "Keep going." Held it for a long time, rain tapping softly against my window, and I understood his kindness wasn't finished. It never would be. Next week, the forgotten child whose song silenced an entire city.